My mistress is pregnant, so we're getting a divorce, Kai said, laughing at me as if to mock me. For 10 years, I've been taking care of my mother-in-law and handled all the funeral arrangements. And instead of thanking me, he presents me with this betrayal. Your expired wife can disappear, Riley said, wrapping her arm around him and continuing to caress her belly with her other hand. To that, I replied, do as you please. I no longer have any need for this house either, and will be leaving with just my essential belongings. Saying so, I left my in-laws' house, filled with memories of my mother-in-law. But I couldn't bear to stay with Kai any longer. I'm sorry, but I need to ask for a favor. Then, I contacted someone. 6 months later, with my preparations complete, I enlisted Leo's help and returned to my in-laws' house. I'll show you our adorable daughter. Kai greeted us, seemingly unfazed. But upon seeing our daughter's eyes, he shrieked as if he'd gone mad. What? What's with those eyes? But upon seeing our daughter's eyes, he shrieked as if he'd gone mad. My name is Mia Garnett, a 37-year-old working housewife. My mother passed away from an illness when I was young, having suffered from a chronic condition that led to a fatal episode when my father was away. By the time he returned, she had already passed. Raised single-handedly by my father thereafter, he vowed at the funeral, I will protect you, Mia. At the funeral, my father said this through tears as he hugged me. And indeed, he did everything to raise me with the help of my grandparents. Despite his busy job, he made time to cook meals and took work off to attend school events. I can do anything for Mia. He could do anything for me and never showing his exhaustion. He must have been pushing himself too hard in ways I didn't know about. Right after I started my career, his overexertion finally caught up with him and he collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital but never regained consciousness and passed away, joining my mother. By that time, my grandparents had also passed away, leaving me completely alone. I never got to thank my dad or say goodbye. Mia, your father would understand without words. He's probably being praised by your mother right now, saying he did well. The person who supported me through this was my childhood friend, Leo. He has a strong sense of justice and always came to my aid immediately whenever I was teased about being from a single-parent family. He's always been a protective figure, coming to my aid whenever needed, embodying a hero-like presence. When my father died, he was the one who took care of everything. A gesture I'm deeply grateful for. But losing my father, my only family, left me in a prolonged state of grief. If you ever need anything, just say the word. Yeah, thank you. That's what Leo would tell me, but with his job being so demanding and his home life far from ideal, I knew I couldn't burden him any further and kept my struggles to myself. Mia, there's a place I'd like to go. Would you come with me? After a sad farewell, let's have a joyful meeting. Seeing how down I was, those around me tried to cheer me up by taking me out and even setting up matchmaking party. Are you Mia? Would you like to talk with me? That's how I met Kai, who would become my husband. Despite trying to maintain a smile so as not to worry anyone, Kai noticed and gently asked, Are you okay? Tired? We exchanged numbers at the party and he made time to listen to me afterwards. Thanks to him, I was able to look forward again and found myself drawn to him. I've fallen for you, Mia. Would you go out with me? After he confessed, we started dating and, after a few years, got married. We don't have kids, but we live a peaceful and happy life. Then, one day, who's this calling? I received a call from an unknown number, which turned out to be from a hospital near my in-laws. So, I quickly called back. What? My mother-in-law? I was informed that my mother-in-law had been taken to the hospital. Mia, you're such a kind soul. I'm so glad you became Kai's wife. Every time I visited, my mother-in-law, who lived alone at the in-laws' house, would say this to me. She took care of me as if I were her own daughter, knowing I had no other family. We had a great relationship. Because of this, I talked to my boss and left work early to rush to the hospital. How can Kai be doing nothing at a time like this? On my way to the hospital, I tried calling Kai multiple times, but he didn't answer. I even sent messages, but they weren't read. So, I had to go to my mother-in-law's side alone. Mother-in-law, are you okay? Oh, Mia. I'm sorry for causing you trouble, she said weakly from her hospital bed. The doctor said she had collapsed at her front door and was found by a neighbor, who called an ambulance. Although she was found quickly, the brain disease means she won't avoid lasting effects. There's a chance she might become bedridden going forward, I was told. I'm relieved her life was saved. But the thought of my mother-in-law, who loved to walk around whenever she had the chance. Becoming bedridden was too much for me to bear alone. Why won't you answer me? Thinking about the future made me feel so anxious. And I wanted to share these feelings with Kai, but I couldn't get in touch with him. Then, as usual, he didn't answer the phone, but finally, he read my message. How's Mom? Was all that Kai sent. I replied with exactly what the doctor had told me. He read the message but didn't respond further. After that, I handled all the hospital admissions paperwork and went home. Welcome back. Kai? Exhausted, when I got home, there was Kai, lounging on the couch. Kai, you were home? You could have gone to see your mom, I said without thinking, and for a moment, he made a face like it was all too much trouble. That made me freeze. I had never seen that expression on his face before. I couldn't believe the kind Kai I knew could look like that. I'm really sorry. Work's been crazy, and I just couldn't get away. Really? I feel terrible for dumping everything on you, Mia. But his annoyed look quickly vanished, replaced by a remorseful expression. Deciding the earlier expression must have been my imagination. I retold him about his mother's condition. I see. Thanks for everything. You're welcome. He smiled kindly, and I nodded back with a smile. After a while, his mother was discharged from the hospital. Given her lasting effects, living alone in their house as before would be challenging. So, we decided to discuss what to do next before she was discharged. Mia, could you quit your job? What? Kai asked me, looking guilty. He felt he couldn't put his mother, who had showered him with love, into a care facility without trying to repay that kindness. But that meant living together was inevitable. But, I've been assigned as the project leader right now, and taking care of her would be difficult for me. That's why I need you to quit your job and take care of Mom. I was actually fine with living with and taking care of his mother. I liked her and wanted to repay the kindness she had shown me. But I also liked my current job and couldn't decide to quit right away. I need some time to think. I'll decide by the time your mom is discharged. All right, I understand. Kai replied, sounding somewhat unsatisfied. Feeling a bit uneasy about his reaction, I wondered. What should I do? What's bothering you? The next day, as I was pondering over this at work, Leo, who happens to work at the same company, approached me. Is something up with Kai? I'm here if you need someone to talk to. It seemed he had noticed my troubled look and approached me during a break. His tone was gentle, but his eyes pleaded, hurry up and tell me. So, I shared with him the exchange I had with Kai yesterday. Why don't you consider not quitting your job, but taking a caregiving leave instead? He suggested that I could take a caregiving leave for now and decide what to do next as things progress. Switching to remote work might also be an option if things become manageable. I hadn't thought of that at all. It was all so sudden. Mia must have been overwhelmed. Maybe you're right. Thanks for listening. I deeply appreciated Leo's practical advice. I'll talk to Kai about it as soon as I get home. Leo seemed thoughtful after I said this, prompting me to ask what was on his mind. No, well, just a bit. He dismissed my question with a smile. Given his expression, pressing further seemed pointless. By the way, how's your sister doing? Same as always. He sighed deeply in response. Leo has a sister 6 years younger than him. A so-called problem child. She keeps getting into trouble with men, switching from one to another. His sister was notorious for her tumultuous relationships and even got involved in theft. Leo often had to reprimand her, but the real problem was their parents. They had desperately wanted a girl. After having a boy first and struggling to conceive again, they finally had the girl they longed for. Maybe because of that, no matter what my sister does, they always say, she's not at fault or you're too harsh on her, and somehow end up blaming me. And because of that, she never learns from her mistakes. As a result, Leo ended up cleaning up her messes because she's family after all. I've witnessed this dynamic for a long time and sometimes had to support him through it. Still the same, huh? I'm familiar with his sister. But given our age difference, we don't interact much. So I've never been directly affected by her actions. I'm always here to listen to your vents. Thanks. I'll take you up on that. He responded with a laugh. And so, I began taking care of my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, Mia. It's okay. I'm doing this because I want to. She constantly looked apologetic. But I always reassured her with a smile. In truth, it didn't bother me. She did what she could on her own, and we had helpers. The workload turned out to be less than expected. What concerned me more was Kai. Work's gonna keep me late, he said. Moving in together with his family was fine until his work became an excuse for hardly being home. Coming home late at night was the better scenario. Often, he'd return in the morning or stay out overnight before heading straight to work. He'd spend entire days off out, leaving hardly any time for us together. I'm sorry about Kai, his mother would say with a guilt-ridden face. Please, don't apologize, mother-in-law. I'm okay. I'd respond with a smile each time, trying not to worry her. But, inevitably, frustration built up. So, sometimes I'd vent to Leo, and we'd share our grievances. You've been here with us for 10 years now. Yes, it flew by so quickly. As time passed, 10 years had gone by, and by then, his mother had become frail, spending most of her time in bed. I'm truly grateful for you. I was happy just to be able to care for my beloved mother-in-law. Thank you truly. I'm so glad you became my daughter. Right after she said that, my mother-in-law passed away. What are you planning for the funeral? Our relationship had grown cold over those 10 years. Still, I thought to discuss the funeral with Kai. I'll leave that to you, he said coldly. With a sigh, I arranged the funeral by myself. After successfully sending off my mother-in-law and settling her belongings. Good job. Leaving it to you was the right choice, Kai said, appearing with a woman I'd never seen before. He hadn't even shown up at the funeral. What do you want now? And who is this woman? Oh, she's my mistress, he said, drawing the woman close as if to flaunt her in front of me. Nice to meet you, I'm Kai's real love, Riley, she said mockingly, stroking her belly in a way that made me suspect something. You're... As I muttered, the two of them smirked. My mistress is pregnant, so we're getting a divorce. Kai laughed as if to mock me. After I spent 10 years caring for his mother and handling the funeral arrangements, he repaid me with betrayal. Your expired wife can disappear, Riley said, wrapping her arm around him, while continuing to caress her belly. Do as you please. I have no need for this house anymore, and will be leaving, I declared, taking only my essentials. The house was filled with memories of my mother-in-law, making it hard to leave. But I couldn't stand being with Kai any longer. Sorry, I have a favor to ask. Then, I contacted someone. 6 months later. With my preparations made, I asked Leo for help and showed up at my in-laws' house, where currently only Kai was living. His mistress, Riley, had gone to her parents' home for childbirth but was due back at the house today. That's why I showed up before Riley could return. Mia, what do you want now? Kai greeted me with a look of annoyance when I rang the doorbell. Then, seeing Leo standing next to me, his eyes widened in surprise. This is President McKnight. I had no idea you'd be here. Kai hurriedly greeted Leo. In fact, Leo is the president of the company where I work, and for Kai, he's the president of an important business partner. Initially, our marriage had led Leo to contract with Kai's company, promoting him to project leader and boosting his career. What brings you here today? Remembering that fact seemed to make Kai momentarily panic. Today's the day your new wife returns, right? How do you know that? He asked, taken aback by my question, while casting wary glances at Leo. I have my ways. Since we're here, why don't you show us your adorable daughter? I suggested, and Kai's face lit up, obviously proud of his child. Sure, I'll show you my cute daughter, he said, welcoming us inside. Leo and I entered, smiling smugly. Soon after, I'm back. Why is my good-for-nothing ex-wife here? Riley and her parents arrived. She addressed me sharply, then seemed startled upon seeing Leo. What? Brother? Yes, Riley was the notorious problem sister. Her expression seemed to ask, why are you here? And Leo gave her a cold look. You really love causing me trouble, don't you? His voice was so cold it even made me shiver. Not just Riley, but her parents and Kai flinched as well. I always knew you were reckless with men, but to think you'd have an affair with someone I know. Leo muttered, and Riley looked visibly uncomfortable. According to Leo, she knew Kai was my husband and still pursued him. Her moral compass seemed as skewed as ever. Anyway, let me show you my daughter, Kai said, breaking the awkward silence and walking towards Riley. The baby in her arms had a sweet sleeping face. This is my daughter, huh? She's cute, Kai said with a smitten look. However, I felt something odd about the baby's face. Her face is... After staring for a few seconds, I realized her face was like Asian. Glancing at Leo, he seemed to have noticed too, nodding with an exasperated look. Probably, the only one oblivious due to his infatuation was Kai. Look how cute she is. If she were your daughter, she wouldn't have been this cute, he said confidently. Oh, she's waking, huh? His expression changed drastically as the baby opened her eyes. What? Those eyes! Kai exclaimed in shock upon seeing her eyes. Our view revealed black eyes. Clearly, the child wasn't Kai's. What does this mean? Is this child not mine? Kai's outburst made the baby cry loudly. Don't yell like that. Oh, please stop crying. At that, Riley and her parents started panicking, trying to quiet her down loudly, but ineffectively, only making her cry more. Give her to me, Leo said, taking the baby and soothing her gently until she fell asleep. You're quite good at this, I remarked, noticing his ease. Leo laughed awkwardly. I'm usually the one taking care of Emily. Emily is the baby's name. Leo then began to explain tiredly. Riley claims she's too tired from childbirth to do anything and just lazes around. Her parents just spoil her. So, it ends up being me or the babysitter I hired taking care of Emily. Originally, Leo hadn't planned on being involved. However, Emily is not to blame. However, he couldn't stand seeing Emily neglected. But why are Emily's eyes black? Don't shout, do you want to make her cry again? Didn't you notice until now? Shut up. Apparently, Kai had been visiting Riley's parents' home until the birth but stopped afterward at her request, not wanting him to see her tired appearance. Hence, he hadn't seen the baby until today. So, I didn't know. That aside, why wouldn't you show your face if you knew it'd be immediately obvious without any measures taken? Leo said, looking exasperated, and Riley looked away. Sighing again, Leo added, I guess you thought, babies just sleep or cry, so it won't be noticeable, right? According to Leo, Riley pretends to dote on Emily but isn't really interested in her. Kai seems to be the same, not taking any measures because it was bound to come out as she grew up. Riley's carefree attitude had me in disbelief. "Don't mess with me. You betrayed me. As for that, you're in no position to complain, are you? You did the same thing by cheating," I countered, silencing Kai. He couldn't argue because it was true that he had pushed the caregiving onto me and engaged in an affair. "I actually came here to talk about that." "Huh? I'm going to sue you and Riley for damages," I announced with a smile. At that, Kai and Riley froze. "Damages?" Kai sounded dumbfounded. As if it was shocking after openly declaring his affair. "Yes, of course. You committed adultery, so it's only natural you take responsibility." But the child isn't mine." "So what? The fact you cheated remains true. Didn't you at least think the child was yours?" I pressed him as he started looking for excuses. Leo then gave Kai a stern look. "As a man, you should take responsibility. Think about the future," implying that their business contract could be terminated based on Kai's actions. Kai's face turned pale. All right. Kai understood that his position would deteriorate if the contract was terminated, reluctantly agreeing. A few days later, Kai contacted me while I was living in my new home. "What do you want? Better yet, hurry up with the damages payment." "Listen, can't we start over?" "What?" My response was cold. What is this man talking about? "I realized you're the only one for me. So." "Right. Without me, you won't get your mother-in-law's estate." I cut him off. Kai fell silent at my words. Afterward, I received a call from a lawyer. It turned out there was a will leaving the estate to me. My mother-in-law truly considered me her daughter and appreciated all the care I had given her. Conversely, she deeply resented Kai for dumping the caregiving on me and fooling around. "I never thought my mother-in-law would investigate you." "You knew about this, didn't you?" "No, I had no idea. I only found out after the lawyer contacted me." Despite my constant caregiving, there were times when I left Nanami with a helper or stepped out when guests came, which must have been when Kai was investigated and the will was prepared. "Thanks to that, I gathered enough evidence. She's my mother, you know? And yet you betrayed both your mother and wife. What are you even saying?" Initially, when the lawyer contacted me, I intended to refuse the estate. However, the will was filled with words of gratitude and apologies towards me, which convinced me to accept it. The will contained endless apologies to you. It mentioned how she repeatedly wanted to suggest divorce but couldn't, fearing you wouldn't take care of her. The inheritance was her way of apologizing. Admittedly, it was sad not to have been informed about Kai's infidelity from my mother-in-law. But I understood her feelings. Even with a helper around, I was the one who hired them. Divorce might have led to the dismissal of the helper. Without anyone to care for her, her life would have been significantly harder. Even if informed, considering the caregiving, I probably wouldn't have been able to divorce. It might have led to a strained relationship with her. Thinking about it, not being informed was probably for the best. "But without me, you can't survive, right? You quit your job for caregiving." "I didn't quit." "What?" 10 years ago, I took up Leo's suggestion and utilized the company's caregiving leave. Once I got used to caregiving, I started working remotely, so I still have an income. Explaining this left Kai yelling, "I wasn't informed." "I did tell you. But you were too engrossed with your mistress to listen." By that time, Kai and Riley were already having an affair, ignoring my calls and leaving me to handle all hospital arrangements. "You've been splurging on Riley, right? Now you're panicking because you're out of savings?" Kai had indeed been splurging on Riley, leaving him with no savings. He lived on loans, expecting his mother's inheritance while spending his salary on Riley. The will leaving everything to me left him not just without damages but also without future living expenses. We settled the shared assets usage as compensation, leaving nothing behind. Well, as a project leader, you must have a decent income, right? You know what you're doing. Yes. Leo informed me. I responded. Leo didn't terminate the contract. However, he discussed the situation with Kai's company's president. The president confronted Kai in front of other employees, quickly spreading the rumor. Because of that, I was demoted from project leader, and everyone looks at me disdainfully. Well, that's good. You got off lightly. What's good about that? Kai shouted. To his outburst, I simply smiled. You still haven't paid the damages, have you? Leo said he didn't want a contract with someone who betrays his wife and breaks promises. What? Wouldn't it be nice to have a boss who chooses you over work? With that, I hung up the phone, leaving Kai probably pale with shock. Imagining his expression, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. It looks fun, Leo said with a gentle smile. In fact, I am living with Leo. I've never been able to say this, but I've always loved you, Mia. He confessed to me on the way home that day. Me? Are you sure? I had always admired Leo since we were kids. That's why I helped clean up Riley's messes and even joined his company to support him. But because he was so special to me, I thought I wasn't good enough for him and had given up on the idea. Besides, he started a company while still a student and had been busy stabilizing it after becoming a working adult. That's why I suffered a silent heartbreak on my own, which was compounded by the loss of my father, leaving me emotionally weakened. Kai took advantage of my vulnerable state. I learned my lesson. If I loved Mia, I should have acted sooner. Leo said, taking my hand. Please, be my girlfriend. Our relationship began with my nod. Then, Leo moved out of his family home and bought a new place for us. Now we're living together, happily. Mia, there's something I'd like to discuss with you, if that's all right? Yes, of course. Soon after, we got married. And were enjoying a peaceful married life, until Leo approached me with a serious look. It's about Emily. He started. Though Leo had moved out, he continued to worry about Emily and kept hiring a babysitter. He found out from the sitter that Riley had left the house, apparently eloping with Emily's real father. Investigations are already in place to ensure he faces proper consequences. Kai was fired after the recent events and was taken by loan sharks after selling the house and failing to repay his debts. Ultimately, Kai was fired and resorted to borrowing from loan sharks to pay the damages, leading to the sale of the family home but failing to cover the debts, resulting in his capture by Men in Black. With such circumstances, the only people capable of taking care of Emily were Riley's parents. However, after Riley absconded with all the household money and left her parents to pay her share of the damages, they couldn't afford to raise a child. So, if you're okay with it, shall we raise Emily together? My suggestion made Leo look at me sharply. To which, I simply smiled. Thank you, Mia, Leo said. Then, under the condition that they would not be involved with us as a couple anymore, we took in Emily. Let's be happy together as a family of 3 from now on. Yes, I'm looking forward to it, I said, smiling at Leo while holding Emily in my arms. 10 years have passed since Emily became our daughter. We've gone through an adoption process, and now we're living as a true family. Mom? What is it, Emily? Here. Emily handed me a red carnation. Because it's Mother's Day. Thank you for everything, Mom, I love you. I hugged her, smiling. I'm so glad she became my daughter. I love you too, I replied. Leo, returning home, saw us and joined in hugging Emily. I'm very happy now and grateful to my late mother-in-law for creating this opportunity for us.